like in June-ish, they can sound a lot like a fish crow. So in June, it's really hard to say for sure unless you can see it and are good enough to identify it. But here's what a fish crow sounds like. Just a little more nasally than an American crow. Okay, compared to American crow. So again, there's the fish crow again. So not quite as loud and raucous, but a little more nasally. So they're back. At least I heard one in the parking lot out there. So that'll be something that we'll hear on the field trips as well when we go, most likely anyway. Okay, we are going to start with mating and breeding systems today. And it's really, there's lots of incredibly interesting behavior when it comes to some of the mating rituals and mating dances that they do. I showed you a few last week. But the big question about breeding is quantity versus quality. Do you want to have more young of less quality or fewer young of more quality? And so a lot of that depends upon the male and the female and how they approach this. So both of them are trying to maximize their reproductive output. So again, but the question is always quantity versus quality. But they want to get the best bang for the buck, so to speak. So they have to decide. The females decide on a mate, but then they also, how many eggs do I have? There we go. So, do males mate with more than one female or not?
Yes.
Okay. You guys are pretty sure that that's a yes. All right, we'll see.
Well, not all of them.
Do birds mate for life?
Some do.
And then do females only mate with one male and invest more energy in raising young, or do they mate with multiple males and spend some more time searching, longer time searching? Okay, so those are some of the big questions that we ask when we talk about these mating and breeding systems. An interesting side to this is that females, they have to invest time in incubating those eggs and raising the young, while the male can keep on mating. Okay. So, but the female, these are all generalities because there's exceptions to everything, but in general, the females put their energy into incubating and raising the young. Okay. Now the males can continue mating. It doesn't mean that they do, but they can during this time period. They go through the courtship aspect, and then once the female has laid eggs and is on the nest, they can actually look for more females or try to mate again. However, during this time period, fewer females are available. So that's the downside of a male kind of leaving the first female alone and in protecting the eggs and incubating the eggs and all that, and be searching for another female because there's just fewer available. We talked about swamping. So they all nest relatively the same time period. So you have few available, and those that are available Are they just young, and that's why they haven't found a mate yet? Are they inferior in some way? They're not healthy. Maybe that's why they haven't had a mate yet. So we don't know. And so that's the risk the male takes. Do I leave the female unprotected while she sits on the nest and look for another female that might be inferior, or do I put all my energy into the first female? So it's all a trade-off here. But females always want the best male, too. It's all genetics here. Who is most likely to provide the best young? So the females are looking for the best male. So just because a male has mated doesn't mean he's going to mate again because no one may choose him. The first one may have chosen him just because there wasn't anybody else around at the time. But now, she's going to want the best one. That's why they have all these characters that illustrate the quality of the male. The song, we talk about the complex song and colors and all kinds of things we'll get into a little bit more today. And the female, again, is the choosy one. So the male has to put a lot of energy into attracting that female or earning her in this, as I said there. He's got to put that energy into his health and protecting a resource, a territory, and all those kind of things. So that takes a lot of energy. So how do they spend their energy the best? So you can see here that they're using body mass and wing length ratio here to show condition. So the bigger the body mass and the longer the wings, the better that ratio is. And so you can see that the better the males are rated, so to speak, the more likely they are to have two mates. So body condition is really important to have multiple mates. Where these that are just, an average male, not a bad one, just an average one, is more likely just to have one mate. Where those that are kind of inferior, for some reason, again, it could be youth, it could be bad territory, whatever, they're probably not going to get any mates at all. All right. So, how do the females, before we get to that, females can store sperm for a while. Now, not, a month or anything, but a week or so, they can store sperm. It depends on the species again. Most common is several days, like around a week or a little less. So she can technically have eggs with more than one father in one nest because she can store sperm. However, the last male that copulates with her fertilizes the majority of the eggs. So being last is important to the male as well as to the female because she's going to keep trying to find the best one. So where you might have 6 eggs, 5 of them may be from the last male and only 1 from the first and earlier male. Just depends. Okay. So if the male sees her copulate with another one, he's likely to come in and do it again to be the last one. Okay? Because being the last one is the most important when it comes to having offspring. So if she's in his territory or even nearby, he's going to be keeping an eye on her until the eggs are actually laid. Because again, it's passing genes on. Fitness. So how do females choose? What characteristics are they looking for? I know we've already talked about song, and I'll mention that again at the end, but what are they looking for to choose this male? Well, resource? How good is that territory? Or how good is the male at getting food? So Arctic terns, okay, the male presents gifts, and it's usually a food gift, fish or something like that, to the female to show that there's good food available and I'm good at getting it. So they present fish during this courtship time to show that they can provide. So the quality of the resource. What is the male providing, and is it a good food, and can he do it consistently, kind of thing. There's the quality of the breeding territory. You get a good territory with lots of resource available, you're likely to get a good mate. So they do this a variety of ways, finding territories. I mentioned way back when we talked about migration that some species split up and the females go one place and the males go another during migration. Well, many times it's the female goes a little further south. Juncos, dark-eyed juncos are a great example of that. The females will go further south than the males do, and then the males will head back north earlier than the females. So they're heading back north to try to get the best territory. The first one back gets its pick of territories, but there's a risk, blizzards and all those kind of things. So there's a real risk in going back early, but the benefit is good as far as mates are concerned if you can get back and get a really good territory. So the territory is a big one. Then the third one is the promise of resources. And this is usually communicated by some kind of signal or song. Because a healthy male that can sing a really complex song probably has access to a lot of resources. So either he sings really complex songs and a variety of songs, or he has some kind of display, whether it's feather coloration, the way he displays the feather during courtship, the dance he does that some of those did last week. Yeah.
Now, are the complex songs passed down from like family to family, or how do some develop more complex songs?
It's part genetic, they think, although they haven't found the exact genes, but it's also that learning time. If the male is there singing more complex songs during that learning phase, then yeah. And then the displays are rather unique. We talked about some last week. I do want to show you a few examples so that you can see some of these. Some of them are quite bizarre, actually. So this is the bowerbird. Some of you probably have seen this. This is a David Attenborough, really well done. But
is the work of the master builder.
Hopefully that gets better.
I'm in the vocal continent on the far western tip of New Guinea, and this is the power of the vocal bowerbird. And what an astonishment it is, surely one of the wonders of the natural world. The bower has been completely roofed over, thatched.
So he makes that with sticks, this big house kind of thing.
Around the base of the sapling, it has a stout pillar rising a little, and it's got two smaller pillars on the side to support it. The whole of the treasury is 5 or 6 yards across, and what treasures it contains, or what variety of treasures it contains. On the far side, there are the black stems of tree ferns. Here is the lawn, neatly planted with moss, and on it, the shiny wing covers of beetles. Now, orange fruit, these glowing orange dead leaves, these are the acorns of the oak trees, the tropical oaks, which are common around here. Behind me, there are black fruits, all of which has been bought specially by the bird.
So he's showing off his ability to get
Bowerbirds are so dedicated
resources.
to their work that even if you sit out in the open beside a bower, they will often continue did you sit absolutely still? This vocal cop, however, is the plainest of his family, with no sign whatever of a crest. But the more spectacular the display in your bower, presumably the less need you have to impress your mate with bright feathers. And it's difficult
That's
to
an
imagine
important point.
a more impressive collection of treasures than this.
He spends all his time and energy gathering and arranging.
But they do have to be properly arranged to show them off really well.
So Mindy had to build a house and pull it for food. So is that like a more extravagant one, or is that like an average one?
It's probably an average one for that species, yeah. But they like a lot of color usually and a lot of food, so we dress it up with flowers and fruits.
Have an obvious appeal for a bird who has a passion for interior decoration.
Is that like the bird equivalent of throwing rose petals all over the place?
I guess so.
These adornments are better than feathers. Individual birds of paradise have no option over the
Okay.
shape and colour of their.
So, I will go ahead and end that one. And look at the next one, which, now this one is just the opposite. They don't put their effort into the place, the bower. They put it into, their energy goes into feathers.
Nations of choosy females have driven the evolution of these remarkable
So remember, females have selected for
The more
these.
extravagant a male is, the more likely he will be noticed.
Oh my gosh.
He's dancing for the female, showing the bright colors.
Scary.
Danger, danger.
The
Another
six
one.
plume displays in his special clearing on the forest floor.
Those phyloplume feathers sticking out at the top.
The magnificent bird of paradise favours the low branches of bushes. His female is modestly dressed. The male has a good set of lungs, but he'll have to do more than flutter his eyelids.
But even that
if he
bright
wants
yellow
to
mouth
impress
is adapted for, or selected for.
It will all depend on his performance.
Oh my gosh. It looks like a dinosaur off of Jurassic Park.
The females may be dull-looking,
So this is that promise of a good resource, because he's so brightly colored, such great feathers.
It's like everyone's judging him.
His right side looks fine, but what about his left?
Of course, the narration is kind of corny sometimes.
Pretty impressive, but is he magnificent enough?
Oh.
Oh dear.
So there's a whole group of the of those particular birds they call birds of paradise. Okay, so another thing that they do is ornaments. Now, some of those feathers we just saw were definitely ornaments. Those phyloplumes sticking out that they can dance, or they use certain tail feathers, those bright colors. But ornaments are energetically expensive, very energetically expensive. They've got to produce those big long feathers, those colors. And so again, the question becomes, is it worth it? Is it worth it?
Apparently.
Apparently, because it's been selected for. That's right. So a couple of other quick ones to show you, but this is one where ornaments can actually almost hinder a bird. So the long-tailed widowbird, long tail is the key here. So this is what it looks like. So the longer the tail, okay, the more energy they put into it, the more likely they are to get to mate. However, what's going to be an issue with that?
Flying.
Flying. How are you going to fly when you're that unbalanced kind of thing? Okay. So, no, I didn't want that. There we go. So, this is the flight of the long-tailed widowbird. As you
Okay.
can see, he doesn't do a very good job of it. So he's patrolling a lek, trying to attract females.
Choosy females have driven the evolution of these remarkable birds.
Just want to clip his tail and let it go free.
All right. So he puts energy into that, but you also take the chance of now you don't fly as well. Oh, somebody else is dancing. There you go. So you take the chance of maybe being caught by a predator or something like that to get the female. It's this choice, is it worth it kind of thing.
Is that like seasonal, or do they keep that?
Some are seasonal, yeah. They're the reproductive, when they molt, they go through that. And some keep a lot of the color during the year. Now, like the birds in the tropics, they can mate all year round. They don't have a breeding season. So they tend to keep theirs a little longer than some of the ones that we have around here breeding. So if you look at the long-tailed widowbird, you can see that, when the number of males are in the area is just kind of, in general, they have bigger harems. This is a bird that does harems. So if there's too many birds in the area, their harems are very small. So you want to get a good area with few males to compete against so that you can have this larger harem and be able to reproduce and produce more offspring. The other thing is they did an experiment with these and they artificially affected their tail length. So they cut the tail of some and then they had two controls and then they elongated one. So they added tail onto him and you can see that the longer the tail, the more he mated. So, and then the shorter the tail. So females have selected for this, so they put energy into that tail length. Okay. So, I know we haven't done this in a while. Get your cards out. So this is a general question about birds as a whole. Are they monogamous? Yes, they're monogamous. No, they're not. Sometimes. And then only some species. Okay, so let's vote. All right. So a mixture, mostly C's and D's. Okay? So sometimes or only some species. So let's see if that's correct. Let's talk about monogamy first, and then we're going to look at some different cases and see what you think. So, monogamy is one male, one female. Okay. And this is this relationship built on the idea and the assumption that the young produced are their genetic offspring. Okay. Now, that leaves some wiggle room, right? Okay. So, again, the assumption that the young are their genetic offspring. So what could that mean?
That they're not their genetic offspring.
Okay, it could be that they're not their genetic offspring, but what could it also mean? potentially. And anything else?
That they don't think the offspring are there.
Okay. If they don't think, okay, then it's probably not a monogamous situation. If they do think it could be more than one female, right? As long as the assumption's there that the young are their genetic offspring. So we usually separate it into monogamy, which is one male, one female, and what we call social monogamy, which means that a male may have one or two females, but they're his offspring, and he may spend time with both of them, both females, helping out both females. Or he may spend more time with the first female, which is what happens a lot of times, and a little time with the second female. Okay? But, again, he's under the assumption that the young are his genetics. So, this is common. Monogamy is common when male help is essential to survival of the young. So, he either has to help incubate or he has to help feed the young. So the male help is essential. So we looked at the live eagle cam the other day, and the males and females both sit on the eggs. Okay, so that is definitely a monogamy. Male help is essential because she has to eat, so she's got to be able to go get food, and so he takes a turn. And then they both feed. In this case, in Eagle's case, it's probably true monogamy. They're stuck together at least for a season. But we also get monogamy when there's just not enough resources. So particularly maybe a bad year, a drought year, something like that. There's not enough resources available. Or it's a male that doesn't have a fantastic territory. So he doesn't have as many resources available. So he puts more into one female than mating with multiple females. Make sense? And then the other issue is monogamy may be a seasonal monogamy, breeding season this year, okay, or it can be for a lifetime. There are birds that are monogamous, true monogamy, for pretty much their lifetime, provided both live. Okay. But a lot of birds are what we call social monogamous. So again, they put most of their effort into one, but they may have a second one or more. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give a handout. This is from a book called Nesting Season by Bernd Heinrich. He writes a lot of science stuff for the lay audience. Okay, so you're going to find him at Barnes and Noble, kind of thing. He does his books are really good to read. He has one called Summer World and Winter World and Nesting Season, and he's got one about migration. He's just written a lot for the public about these subjects. And these are copied weird. Stapled weird and copied weird, but it was one. So what I would like to do there's a whole bunch of them. We're going to divide these up. What I want you to do is I'll give you an assignment. Read about that one, and then we're going to share about 2 or 3 sentences about each one. Okay? So, let's put you first 3 on the nesting site specificity of albatrosses, right there on 47. Okay, you 3 read that. On page 50, we'll let Brent and down to Jade, you 3 read Teamwork in Ravens on page 50. Okay, see it? Okay. independence in hornbills, we'll let you three read this. Okay. Multitasking in sand grouse on page 53. You four, Matt, Brian, and Ariana, Ross. Okay. You four read that one. Multitasking in sand grouse, 53. Let's see. You four read flamingos, Phil and Mitch on page 54. 55, we're going to let you four in this line here, Amber, okay, you guys, down egg cooling by Egyptian plovers. Here on 55. All right. The next four read parenting in thermometer birds. You guys read from Rachel down. No, wait. That won't work. They've got an assignment, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. You two and behind you, okay, read, is it Brian? Austin. You do parenting 2 by 1. Okay. Yes. Did I? All right, never mind. So Austin, why don't you go over with these two over here and do the parenting by 2 or by 1? Okay? Got it, I understand. I thought you were saying, I want to do All right, so Holly and you 5 right there do parenting by 2 sitting tight on 58. And the last 3, Peyton over Daniel, do teamwork and distraction on page 61. So read these and decide on about 3 sentences that you're going to tell the class, 2 to 4 sentences that you're going to explain yours to the class.
Just gonna each pick a sentence that we like.
You can use your own words.
Do you want to pick something out of the first paragraph?
Sure.
I mean, if you want to do it that way, there's 3 paragraphs, 3 of
Yeah, that
us.
works.
Do you want to pick something out of the paragraph and then just say?
I'm not really good at that.
We were talking about how there's 3 paragraphs. If you want to just pick something out of the paragraph, choose at the first paragraph. And then if you find something interesting in those other ones, you just kind of put that.
I was just thinking we could just pick like the most important things we see. Like that
brainstorming. I don't know.
Sorry.
You're fine. So, what were the things that you?
Well, the things I was thinking that were most important were like that she makes him pretty much just completely feed her before she even lets herself be put in the hole. So she makes sure he's actually going to do that. And then like that they completely close off the hole. And then that she loses her feathers totally during that time.
I was saying that too. What did you pull out of the first one that you were going to talk about?
Just that she pretty much puts herself in there, and she's the one who closes it. Like, I figured the male would close her in there, but he brings this stuff and regurgitates it for her, but then she cements the hole and locks herself in. But I don't know if that was actually in the first paragraph or if that was more the second one.
I feel like that kind of goes. It kind of makes sense too, though, because it's like she completely like. I guess okay. So I like your point about the food. How she makes him. So you were talking about how she makes him prove himself first.
Yeah.
And then you can talk about the cementing, and I'll talk about the
Okay,
feathers.
that works.
Okay, be sure to pick one person to be your spokesperson.
Wait, one person? Can we not each do one that we like? Okay.
Are we going to turn something in? Do you need to write it down? No.
How many groups are not ready to present? Not? Okay. They had the longest reading.
How was your Easter break? Good.
You guys pick someone or I will.
Yesterday I could barely walk, like I was limping all day. And I worked Saturday night after writing on Friday.
Okay, we gotta go to get finished. I'll come back to you guys. Alright? They had the longest section to read. So let's start with speak loudly and just 2 or 3 sentences or we won't get done. Teamwork and Ravens.
That's us.
Go.
Ravens
Speak
bond-
loud.
Ravens bond for life, and they also hunt together, which is unique. And they do this because their young takes longer to raise, so it takes more time each year at the beginning of breeding season.
Okay, so Ravens is probably true monogamy then.
Yeah.
Because they stick together even in non-breeding seasons. Okay? Alright. Who's next? Is Hornbills.
Don't forget albatross.
I know.
Okay.
They're still working. They had the longest one. Who did Hornbills?
Right here.
Okay.
So the female hornbill forces her mate to pretty much completely provide for her before she even will nest.
Okay.
And then once she does, like, he brings all the material and regurgitates it, and then she's the one who actually seals herself in there.
Okay.
But she's okay. So they say it seals itself in this little cocoon thing where there's only a slit that it can be fed through, and she sheds all of her feathers, her tail, and her wing feather. Like her flight feathers are just gone, so she's absolutely stuck in there. And in the end, she has to like peck her way out to get out of this hole.
Okay, so this is total dependence. The female is totally dependent on the male because she seals herself into the cavity. It's really kind of cool when you think about it. And then he feeds her through a slit, and just a slit opening. And if he's not there to feed her, she has no feathers. She melts all her feathers. She can't eat. She's going to die.
Sounds like the worst thing ever.
Totally dependent. Okay? But it's worked over millennia here. So.
And the human race, we'd all just die.
All right.
We were just
Sand grouse, multitasking.
The African ground nesting sand grouse finds relative safety for the young by breeding in inhospitable deserts. And so the male will go to water sources up to 80 kilometers away to get water to bring back to the nest. And he's got specialized feathers that will soak up like a sponge and then carry it back.
Okay. So again, this is a true monogamy because they are dependent upon that male to bring water back to the nest to cool the eggs because they're right in the middle of the desert. Okay. So that's a kind of an interesting. We talked earlier about feathers. They can have that adaptation to hold water. All right. Sand grouse. You guys ready yet? All right. Let's go back to albatross, which is the first one.
Okay, so they mate for life, and they may return to the same nest site for over 60 years. However, that does not necessarily mean that they are sexually exclusive. And whenever a mate dies, the other partner usually does not take another mate. It takes them 1 year to produce one chick. At 78 days incubation and 250 to 280 days of feeding. Usually the parents go on very long foraging trips. They found one female to go 4,173 kilometers in 5 days.
Just to gather food for the chicks.
And usually the young will weigh 160% more than their parents whenever they leave the nest.
Okay. So this is the wandering albatross, which gets the name from wandering around all the time. So another one. All right, flamingos.
That was us.
Okay.
Okay, flamingos also inhabit like inhospitable places. They do the mud flats, so they don't really have predators. But we don't know if they're actually exclusive. They mate in like 3 million pairs, but they all nest in the same area. And since they're not expending any time or energy with predators, we don't know if they're using that energy to find other mates or what they're doing.
Okay, so we still have a lot we don't know, okay, about this system. Egg cooling by plovers. Did I forget to? Oh, that's you guys. Okay.
Egyptian plovers
Speak up.
will make dozens of space before choosing their nesting site to confuse predators like crows and kites.
Okay.
So they'll bury their eggs in the sand to incubate and to hide them from predators. And so they'll actually even make faux nests in the sand to confuse predators. So they have to look more and figure out where the eggs are.
Okay.
And they'll also, the male and the female work together to hide the eggs and to both incubate the eggs. And they also will go down to the water to get wet to cool off.
Okay. Another one where nesting in inhospitable places reduces the time and energy for predators. Okay, thermometer birds. Yes.
Okay, these guys, the little babies, are super independent. They are never interact with their parents or family. They run and fly on their own. But they put a lot of care into actually raising the young. The males make incubators that keep the eggs at a perfect temperature so that they can all be born, and that allows the female to just like go around everywhere and collect resources and lay eggs all the time.
So that's this continual. The male is the one that uses his bill to, they nest like alligators when they bury their eggs in the compost, and the male will actually tend to it and add more or take some away, judging on the temperature of the nest. All right, parenting 2 by 2, 2 by 2 or by 1? Who's that? Be brave.
So ducks and geese are different. Ducks, male don't stay with female, and so it doesn't mean that they're not protecting them, because they'll use themselves as bait or something. Female or
Okay, is that it?
yes.
Okay, so this is a case where the male's really not too involved. Okay, it doesn't share the incubation responsibilities, but he's around, so to speak. All right, sitting tight, 2 by 2 sitting tight.
That was us. It was mostly about mourning doves and how they have a monogamous partnership
if you see mourning dove nests around campus, they're really messy. They're just, you wouldn't even know that it was a true nest. There's no cup shape to it. And then they just sit there the whole time. Again, their energy is put into raising fewer eggs, okay, to avoid predators just by being seen going back and forth and so forth. And the last one, teamwork and distraction.
Cuckoos are monogamous. They have a pair partnership, and they use it to parasitize nests. Like the male will go in and distract it. Male, female are there, and the female will come in and lay her egg. And they also like perch side by side, and they can prey each other and have social interactions like that, vocalizations and stuff. And then the spotted cuckoo, or whatever his name is, they copulate for like a really long time, like 2 minutes or something. So it suggests that it's more of a bonding ceremony than an actual mating. And the greater roadrunners, which are a species of cuckoo, mate for life, and they copulate even after their eggs are hatched and gone, which suggests that it's also a bonding ceremony.
Okay. So in this case, I totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, cuckoos can do, certain cuckoo species will do like a brown-headed cowbird and lay eggs in another one's nest. So they work together in distraction so that the female can go in and lay eggs. Okay? So these are all monogamy, examples of monogamy. But you can see that in some cases there's a blurred distinction. Like we really don't know what's going on. Are they having extra pair copulations? Maybe there's mixed paternities. So there's some blurred lines in a few of these where the male is not involved, so what's he doing? You know, he may be mating with others, he may not, but he still may give the majority of his attention to the first mate. That's more of a social monogamy. So there's still a lot of blurred lines for many species about whether they're true monogamy or they're social monogamy. So you could see these again. Okay, just remember that. All right. So we'll end there today. You guys are having a lab test next week, so make sure that you are keeping up.